Dear ESFRI colleagues, dear member of the European Commission, dear ERA stakeholder, dear participants here in the room and online via Zoom, it is my pleasure to welcome you today at the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Science for the first ESFRI Stakeholder Forum on behalf of the whole Belgian delegation. It's really a pleasure to host this, the first stakeholder forum and much awaited stakeholder forum that will start today the discussion between the ERA stakeholders, universities, research organizations, the private sectors, decision makers, and the research infrastructures. My name is Laurent Geiss. I'm working for the Belgian Science Policy Office, and I'm one of the Belgian ESFRI delegates. And my role today will be to guide you through the agenda. And now I would like to call to the floor for the welcome on behalf of the host institution, Professor Thierry Bacalio, which is the head of the Operational Directorate, Taxonomy and Phylogeny at the host institution.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Well, on behalf of the General Director of our institution, I would like to welcome you all very warmly here at the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, one of the 10 Belgian federal research institutions, and an institution that is strongly involved in the ESFRI program, since we participate in no less than 6 of the different projects in a wide variety of subjects. And so we are also very proud to be actually the first place where this kind of meeting, this stakeholder meeting, is organized. And we hope also then that our environment is not only welcoming you, but also maybe inspiring. And we hope that maybe in between some of the presentation discussions, you may have the time to have a little visit to the exhibitions. We have a marvelous collection of huge dinosaurs. Maybe it will open the mind and stimulate discussions and promote collaborations, because I think that's one of the strong points of the whole ESFRI program. So I will not take much of your time because you have lots of things to discuss, and so I hope you will have a very successful and a very inspirational meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Thierry. I'm sure that the environment will inspire interesting discussion. Now I would like to call to the floor Jana, Kolar, the ESFRI chair, for the welcome words on behalf of ESFRI. And she will be followed by Panagopoulou from the European Commission, Director ERA Innovation at DG RTD.
Thank you, Laurent. Good morning, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear friends. A warm welcome on behalf of ESFRI at this first ESFRI Stakeholder Forum Meetup. It's been a bumpy road so far. The idea coming from 2019 ESFRI's white paper was meant to see the light during Slovenian presidency in Ljubljana, where we were supposed to meet up in 2020 for the first time, and unfortunately that was prevented by the increased outburst of the pandemic. So we could only have our kickoff, which was virtual, in March during the French presidency, and now we're finally able to greet you all in person, in full house today, with as many registrants as we had the seats available for this invited event. I thank you very much for responding to our invitation and hopefully contributing to seeing by the end of the day new ideas on how to help research infrastructures help with with the achievement of your goals, help research and you will help research infrastructures enhance their services, develop new services, address the bottlenecks. So by the end of the day, we hopefully will have a brighter future for our research and innovation system in Europe. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to our discussions.
Good morning, everybody. Very nice to see you in person today after a long time that we haven't met. And I'm extremely thankful to the host for the excellent organization and for providing us this inspiring place, which I hope, not me probably, but you will be able to discover during the lunch break and the coffee breaks. As Jana said, the establishment of such a stakeholders forum has been discussed the last years, and in particular last year there was a high-level group established with the participation of Jean-Éric Paquet, the ex-director, former Director General of DG Research and Innovation, which initiated a first dialogue with different stakeholders on the role of research infrastructures. What research infrastructures deliver today, what research infrastructures can deliver more for the challenges that we are all having in Europe, but also for delivering more targeted services for those they need it. And how this collaboration between the different stakeholders, universities, RTOs, research infrastructures, public services will enable us to pave the way for a bright future for research infrastructure. So today there is a long agenda. There are very targeted sessions that I have seen in the agenda addressing the different challenges that we have. And the good news from Prague, where we were yesterday, where we had the meeting of the ERAC, so the advisory body established by the Council to advise the Commission and the Council on the future developments and on the development of European research area, they have to bring you one key message. Member states, at Director General level, they committed on the 20-year actions. Which are those actions that Member states they are most committed? Is the action on career of researchers and the action 8 on research infrastructures. So you can see very clear that 24 Member states, they have committed to work together with the Commission services and the enhanced group of stakeholders to deliver a new era for research infrastructures. And I believe the discussions that we are going to have today, but in the future as well, on a more structured way, will provide us a very fruitful input on this, on the delivery of this Action 8 and on the expectations of Member States and Europe. Thank you very much and looking forward to have the output of your discussions today.
Thank you. And now it's time to start with the first session, the opening session. And I would like to call to the floor Professor Carlo Rizzuto, former chair of ESFRI, that will moderate the session.
So good morning to everybody. Good morning to everybody. And let's start now the first session trying to understand better what is the scope of this stakeholders forum. So we have here Marek Vysinka, the Presidency, is Director General for Research Infrastructures. You present yourself. And the question to you is what the Presidency is expecting from this meeting in terms of stakeholders' input.
Okay, I have a little correction.
Yeah,
because
sorry.
I'm not the Director General, I'm head of unit for research infrastructure at our Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports. And we saw during the COVID pandemics that research infrastructures are part of critical infrastructure because they really quickly involved in solving or finding the problem of the crisis. And we know that the research infrastructure that we nurture for years are here to help us in solving the problems which can emerge very quickly. So the research infrastructure topics is very important for us, and I think we expect from this meeting, or this first meeting of stakeholders, to have new ideas how to build a research infrastructure ecosystem, and how to connect research infrastructure not only inside one country but in all European Union, because it's quite important for us.
Just another question, how the output of this meeting will be brought in the presidency documents, and how you plan to have the follow-up as this presidency and in the trio?
Okay. I start with a little advertisement, because we have, or we will organize the International Conference for Research Infrastructure next month in Brno. It's second largest city in Czech Republic. So you are welcome physical or online participation. And the outcome of this meeting will be discussed there as well, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Now I give the floor to Jana Panagopoulou. And how do you see the stakeholders' engagement? I know that you are much more active at ERA level, so we should maybe learn a bit from the engagement of stakeholders inside the ERA discussion, and then bring these at the level of research infrastructures.
Thank you very much for this question. Indeed, the last 2-3 years, I lost counting. We are very much active on developing and putting in place the new era, the new European research area, where is a place that not just for discussion between member states and commission services, but also with a strong involvement from the stakeholders. And we have established in the new governance, the European Research Area Forum, a place where we meet almost every month to discuss the different priorities and activities that member states, the Commission, but also stakeholders have decided that they are the highest priorities for the future of research and innovation policy in Europe, to be implemented at political level, but to be put in place practically by the stakeholders themselves. So what we have agreed with the member states is that we need to have a very structured participation of the member states in all the deliberation of the ERA Forum. So practically, we have representatives from the 7 stakeholders groups, research organizations, research infrastructures, universities, the RTOs, that they are participating to every meeting. They have access to all the documents, to all the discussions that we have, and they are providing input. As I said, we have an ERA policy agenda with 20 actions, one of which is the research infrastructures, another one is the technology infrastructures, but there are many other actions. And we ask member states to commit to these actions, so to do concrete actions in their national administration, in their countries, in order to deliver those actions. How we deal in order to deliver, to design first, and then to deliver this ERA policy agenda. First, in the designing phase, we have enhanced dialogues with all stakeholders for each one of the ERA actions. And what we have is also the result of the discussion with the stakeholders. But that was not enough. In the implementation, the involvement of stakeholders is even more important, because you know very well, if we speak about research assessment, then it's not the Commission in its office that will assess the research differently. We put the framework, but it's the institutions, the organizations, the research infrastructures, or the universities, they have to look at this in a different way. The same like the research careers. We don't have the competence to do things alone at European level. So in this context, when we ask input from the member states for their commitments, we ask at the same time also the stakeholders. And we have 17 stakeholders representatives, organizations that they have committed also to the implementation of the ERA policy agenda. So in other words, we work hand by hand. The ERA Forum is a place where member states and stakeholders and associated countries, they are having a very open, and constructive dialogue, and we expect that the stakeholders will provide us their input in a very structured and representative way from what are their needs, so that when we define the policy agendas, we define them in such a way that they address the stakeholders' needs as well.
Well, it will be very interesting from my point of view, at least, as one of the founders of ESFRI, to understand how ESFRI is considered a real stakeholder by itself, because it's made by the member countries, and being a proposer on one side and implementer on the other side. So it will be probably very interesting, one of the outcomes of this meeting. What is your opinion on this? What do you expect directly from this?
Indeed, the research infrastructure with ESFRI represents member states administration, but also a big group of research infrastructures. The research infrastructures themselves and the ESFRI group, it could play this dual role. And this is why it is extremely important that when we have the discussions on what are the needs of the research infrastructures, we do it in a broader way, also taking into consideration those stakeholders that they are not research infrastructures, but they are users of the research infrastructures. But at the same time, a university could be also a research infrastructure itself. So indeed, it is very challenging to see, and I'm looking to your outcome of this discussion, on how we establish a methodology where a unique stakeholder who plays this dual role could at one side think about his needs as a user, but consider also as a research infrastructure what can deliver. So second that I would like to say, I think ESFRI it's composed from representatives. I'm talking about the ESFRI group from the member states, but it's extremely important to have this open dialogue with a big group of stakeholders that they will engage with the ESFRI representatives. I believe, from my experience from the era, that is going to bring much more added value to all the work that we are doing in deliverable in relation to the future of research infrastructures. And third, in this broader discussion with the stakeholders, we should take into consideration stakeholders that are representing communities that from climate, from energy, from health, from digital. So interactions and collaboration also with the EOSC, the work that was done in the EOSC, so that what we deliver will be really on the top of what are the challenges that we have today.
Thank you, Anna. Now we come to Jana, the chair of ESFRI, and I ask her what is her expectation of this meeting in the framework of the era in general, but of this meeting in particular.
Thank you, Carlo. So I'll just try to contribute to the scope that was already provided by my predecessor, Mr. Vysinka and Anna. So you remember well as the founder and one of the earliest chairs, one of the founders, one of the earliest chairs of ESFRI, how ESFRI was established. So Anna already mentioned ESFRI is a policy is a body that brings together policymakers from member states and European Commission, and is tasked with coherent development of research infrastructure landscape and policy in Europe. Now, this means that we will have, based on the 20 years of experience that we have with ESFRI, we have produced this landscape where we work together, pool resources across various domains, reduce fragmentation in order to serve European research and innovation community better. Now, I'm sorry, but nowadays the landscape is clearly changing, and ESFRI needs to provide and research infrastructures both should step out of the comfort zone from which they started. So the starting idea more than 20 years ago was to enable this excellent blue sky research, which fascinated us all through this ivory tower, single-sided, magnificent research infrastructures that really fascinated us with the discoveries that we could never even imagine. Now, since then, it's becoming clearer and clearer that the investment agenda into European research infrastructure, which now exceeds 24 billion, comes also with societal responsibility and expectations, which go well beyond just fundamental research. Meaning that we need to provide services to broader communities, to the communities that are not the typical users of the research infrastructures that were established. And this requires research infrastructure to step out of the comfort zone, look at what are the needs of these various communities, exchange with these communities, for which this also today will be, for some of them, the first encounter with research infrastructures. For some others, really encounter that has a long history. But we will all try to develop this also through the following years into increased quality of services, new services to serve the European society, which is facing, and global society, which is facing increased challenges. Now, having said that, we should not lose sight of the fascination that I started with the fundamental research. Research infrastructures are firmly embedded in the first pillar also of Horizon. We need the discoveries that they enable. We should not lose sight, despite the fact that we need to increase the immediate societal impact of the work of research infrastructures. And this is also because with increased applications, we will be able to meet the goals, for example, climate goals of 2030, but we will surely miss the ones of 2050. We need increased investments also in fundamental research in order to meet these goals, because our society clearly cannot avoid not to meet the 2050 carbon neutral society. So I'm looking forward to today's discussions, which, as I mentioned earlier, and my predecessors, will explore how better to address the needs of various communities to increase the impact of research infrastructures. We are particularly interested in the bottlenecks that you see and in the opportunities that you can identify in discussion with our research infrastructures in various panels, so that we can, at the end of the day, be all smarter and better equipped to face the future challenges.
I think that Anna wanted to add something.
No, I'm always inspired by
Or
Jana, and I would like, yes,
stimulated.
Yes, of course. Two things that I would like to say. Yesterday and the day before, I was in Prague to a very excellent ERAC meeting and research working party in parallel organized by the Czech Presidency, and I had the pleasure to visit ELI. And I'm saying that because it is a big achievement that we have ELI. It's an excellent research infrastructure. And what fascinated me also, it was a presentation about what ELI could do in addition to the basic research. So providing services to SMEs, providing services to industry, for experimentation, for testing new prototypes, new materials. So I think this is something that could pave the way for new considerations of the role of research infrastructures also in the future. The second issue, you spoke about the framework program, and that research infrastructure, of course, is under the basic research, is bottom-up, and we should continue to do fundamental research with the research infrastructures, of course. But we need also to see, as Jana said, how we can go out from our comfort zone, also in relation to the program itself. So these discussions that we are going to have now, but also in the future, I believe, will help us to have some concrete input also on the considerations of the midterm review of the framework program and probably on the next framework program. So how we could see the prioritization of investments on the basis of a gap analysis coming also from the needs, and how we can better prioritize our future investments, and whether we need to consider a more innovative approach the funding needs of research infrastructures. I don't have any hidden agenda, just to let you know. If you think that I'm coming with a hidden agenda, no. But I think this is the appropriate period to start thinking together with a broader community of stakeholders on how we can best capitalize of what we have, our framework program, our investments on infrastructures, and what we can do best for the next period.
Well, definitely the role of the Commission in research infrastructures as a catalyzer has been extremely effective. And if I have to speak about ELI, sorry, after Brexit I say ELI and not ELI, I must say that the Czech Republic in particular has been investing very heavily also structural funds. And it would be interesting to know, in the light of this meeting of the stakeholders, whether the Czech Republic as a presidency, but also in the future as one of the main investors in research infrastructures, has some expectations in what comes out from this meeting. And I apologize for but it was a good wish, actually.
Okay, I will start with Ellie. Because we have invested quite heavily from European funds because we saw big synergy between the evolution of local environment in the place where the infrastructure is seated. Because as you may know, Eli is located near Prague in a small, let's say, village or small town, and we see quite heavy influence of the infrastructure on the city. On the city, on the development of city, on school system in the city, and it's the reason why we invested European funds in such type of adventure. And from this meeting, there can be many financial sources to invest in research infrastructure, but we have to know or need to know what kind of services is needed, not only among current users, but among potential users. It's the broadening of user community of research infrastructures.
Well, definitely, ELI is a very good example of setting up an area, not only an infrastructure. And this, I think, is something that has to be picked up by stakeholders in general in their way of thinking about research infrastructures. You wanted to add something, Jana? About your expectations and about the
No, there's always so many things to add, so this would be a never-ending story, but I'll just very briefly say that I would like to thank to everyone that responded positively to come to this meeting today and also help us prepare for it by sending us your contributions and questions that were sent to the moderators of various sessions to incorporate it into today's agenda, because we can only move this field out of the comfort zone, also what Anna said, so closer to the various user communities also from the industry, various partnerships to address also, for example, the industrial technology roadmaps, all of which will be also presented in this, will take part in these panels. We will only be able to do this through an open dialogue. So we will be launching after this meeting also a platform for exchange of opinions. And you will find in this platform a variety of content. And through this, we will also try in the future to have this increased dialogue that also Anna said that contributes already very strongly to the implementation of the ERA Forum agenda, which implements the future, which brings to life the new era. So we are, with this meeting here, starting a similar exchange for research infrastructures.
Anna.
I mean, just to add to what Jana said, I think you said it all, Jana, that there will be a lot of methodologies that need to be developed and the new steps for delivering the action aid. And I think there also the stakeholders that they could provide some input. They could be part of this, of a co-creation exercise to define the methodology that is needed in order to do the gap analysis and in order to deliver what will be the future services needs or the current and future needs for service or research infrastructures. And I'm saying that because stakeholders needs to feel ownership as well of what are going to be the results. And in order to feel ownership, you need to be able to participate to the design of the methodology as well. At least that has been my experience from the ERA Forum, and it works extremely well.
We are ahead of time, strangely enough, and would be probably interesting to know whether any of the stakeholders is expecting to get some input, but I cannot see the stakeholders because I am blinded completely by the lights. Is anybody asking some information or some suggestion? Yeah, at least one. I was wondering. I try to act as a provocator, as always, not only as a moderator.
Yannick Legret, Operas Research Infrastructure. So we have spoken a lot about physical research infrastructure or research infrastructure funding physical instrument. I work more in the social sciences and humanities area, which is a slightly more difficult area where to grasp the benefits or to understand what is the immediate or long-term impact. So how could we better communicate with all the stakeholders and the funding agencies like the European Commission or the different member states to stimulate the support to this more virtual research infrastructure?
Who wants to answer? Well,
I'll say that within ESFRI we try to support all the research infrastructures, and it's particularly meetings like this and the agenda that we have at ESFRI also through the ERA action, which is dedicated to research infrastructures, is to involve stakeholders in a closer discussion. Throughout this year, although we were still experiencing pandemic, and we still are, we tried to organize several meetings really addressing topics that will enable research infrastructures to express their needs and bring it in contact with the funders, be it European Commission, member states, structural funds. So there should be plenty of opportunities within the ambitious agenda that we have on the plate of ESFRI and European Commission to implement, to bring to life your needs and see how they can be best funded. So I really think the dialogue here will be essential.
My question is, are you feeling excluded from all these discussions?
So let's...
No, I don't feel excluded. I have some struggle, for example, to find which parallel session I have to attend. But it's more difficult to make the funding agency understand why they have to invest maybe as heavily as in physical infrastructure in a social sciences and humanities research area. So unfortunately, the last years have proven that science or, let's say, pandemics may have a huge impact on society and how citizens perceive events and progress. So I hope that this will raise, and also there has been a decision from the European Council on competitiveness to stimulate the support of that. And what I would like to, the last point I would like to advocate is also for multilingualism, because we always consider that the main language is English, But in our area, there is a lot of scientific production made in every European language, for example. And it's very nice if we can all benefit from all the discovery and progresses that are made in every country.
No, certainly the agenda has been evolved. The European agenda after pandemic has been evolved, so we all know the social aspect is much more prominent in the European agenda. So I certainly believe that the discussions that we are going to have today and the coming period will help to see what can be done in this area. And second, multilingualism, it becomes one of the priorities also in the context of delivery of communication, information, even for funding opportunities in the European Commission. So certainly something that has been already considered and will be continued to be considered, despite the fact that it is very challenging. And that goes beyond UK, Brexit or whatever. I mean, I think multilingualism is essential, and this is why the communication on, I'm just thinking about programs that are implemented at member state level is in different language, is not in English. But even for the Central Commission communication, let's put it like this, we'll try to go more and more local and to deliver multilingualism, so at all levels.
Jana. Yes, Yannick, very briefly to the social sciences and humanities. I don't think that actually the field is excluded. We try to strongly address it all. If not, a good example are also our hosts today, the Natural History Museum. I thank you very much for hosting us today, and to the Belgian delegation for helping us organize this. They've just mentioned they take part in 6 of the projects, which is amazing, which is also already shows the breadth of activities which are funded by the national funders and also European Commission. In addition, world is becoming more and more complex, and it asks for integration across disciplines, so across the domains. And this is also what we follow today. Not only we have one session which is dedicated to social sciences and humanities more broadly, mainly particularly focusing also on cultural heritage, inspired also by the environment that we are in today, but we include also social sciences in some other sessions which address other topics. Also, for example, within the Green Deal, what is funded is approach to contribute to the Green Deal by research infrastructures, bringing together social sciences and their environmental research infrastructures. So there is a broad scope for improvement of collaboration, not only within one domain, but across the domains.
And just to add, I have normally my collaborators that start looking around when I start this part of the story, but one of the areas that was, let's say, influencing my thinking about ESFRI and what to do about ESFRI was the fact that the network of research infrastructures that was existing in Europe from the year 600 onwards, in the Middle Ages, was the Abbey's libraries, which they were organized as research infrastructures. So they were hosting for free the scholars, not only, but they have been the source of some of the oldest industries in Europe, like beer. Here in Belgium, there is a lot of it, and sweets, pharmacy, and so on and so forth. So if we think about what is the use of human sciences in general and the effect on hard sciences and hard industries, we should go back in history and find out that it's very wise that ESFRI has included, expanded the road mapping to human sciences and social sciences in general. Any other provocative? There is one more provocation. We have time. Yes, one here. And there are 2 more over there.
Sorry.
There is a microphone.
Is it working? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Okay, there is a microphone there.
Yeah, I have a question which is somewhat related to what Yannick was bringing up. And Yannick, I represent SSH in many discussions in Europe, so let's have a talk later.
Loudly.
But as you all know, there are also initiatives that do not fall under the responsibility of ESFRI or under the scope of ESFRI immediately, but that are affecting the work of several research infrastructures, especially in the case of data infrastructures, where currently data spaces are being initiated. And many of the research infrastructures here in the room apply for funding under that header. And it's, for them, part of what they are doing anyhow. And the question is how the Commission sees the relationship between those developments that don't fall immediately under RTD and other initiatives taking place with funding from the European Commission.
Here I can enter. Let's remember always that the highest part of the funding of research infrastructures is the member states. And the European money is normally a catalyzer, extremely important catalyzer of new activities. So let's not fall into the trap of asking to the Commission the support of research infrastructures, but remind the member states.
There may be other stakeholders in the room. By the way, my name is Francisca de Jong. I represent Clarinet.
Yeah, sorry. Francisca. Now I recognize you because the light was terrible. Okay, one more. And then we close.
Thank you. Alexia Gazzanido, my name. I represent the researchers, also from the social sciences, but I'm also here as part of an infrastructure, CESTA, and an aspiring infrastructure, MEDEM, the monitoring of electoral democracy. Now my question to you, you have spoken very inspiringly, Jana, Kolar, about getting out of our comfort zones and talking to new communities. Now, we don't lack imagination what the communities might be, but it would be interesting to see what you have identified as these interesting communities and how you imagine the collaboration to happen. And I expect that this meeting would give us more information and more ideas about how to do this.
Okay, so we have ideas for the meeting. There is, Daniel. Yeah, okay.
Hi, Carlo. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, to see you all again, to meet you all again, and to have something like normality again. Daniel Vysinka from Austria, and like Carlo for almost 25 years or so in this ESFRI business. I think one of the best things after the invention of the wheel was the invention of ESFRI. So it changed the landscape in Europe. One of the main reasons for our engagement in Austria was not only to invest in the physical sciences, although I'm a physicist and you too. You was. Oh, you changed. No, we talked about how can we put these efforts which are in the hardcore sciences, what can we learn from there? And I'm still of the opinion the learning curve is not at its end. Just to tell you a story, there are this huge budget after COVID from the Commission. And in Austria, it was very simple to have a research program for quantum physics, and we got a huge money for that. I'm very proud for that. But there was no initiative in the social sciences. We all need and learn from COVID that there is a big need for more impact. But there was a missing, I don't know what it is. So when we talk about integrating or a broader perspective of all these things, I always, and you too, learn from the physicists. When they have a program, they get their machine. Yeah? And we saw other big European, I do not want to mention the special things not to blame anyone, but we saw other big initiatives where there was not this unique drive behind. There was a lot of quarreling and discussion, which also the physicists do, but not on an open stage. That's the difference, perhaps.
Okay.
So these are very clear words. I see ESFRI has still a very, very big mission to implement all these broad sciences.
So
and I'm sure it will happen.
So there are suggestions that the stakeholders should quarrel between themselves a bit more to come out with stronger ideas towards the governments and towards the Commission. I don't know whether the Commission or the governments represented through ESFRI and through the chair of the presidency, want to add anything to this? Maybe yes?
Unfortunately, each member state has a different approach to its own infrastructure landscape. So, for example, in Czech Republic, we have about 6 infrastructure in social science and humanities domain. And we would like more. Unfortunately, we don't have more money, as it's quite common in those times. And I think it's quite important for, let's say, user community and operator of research infrastructure in the social sciences to somehow persuade its government that social sciences is really important, because it really is.
Okay, so we know now, and this is the message to the stakeholders, don't concentrate only on the large infrastructures, but concentrate on the useful infrastructure. So this was always one of the discussions that we had in ESFRI in the beginning. Visible and inaugurable versus inclusive approach. I think that we have to have the inclusive approach, but including now also the approach towards the non-research world. And here I think that the social sciences and humanities is a must to be added also to the hardware, and not only the very large infrastructures. I think that by now we can maybe close this session. Anna can rush to the next meeting. And we have a coffee session now, and it will be then the first operative session of the conference will start. Thanks to everybody, and thanks.